Oregon Democrat Congresswoman Suzanne Bonamici has represented Oregon's 1st congressional district since 2012. It includes most of Portland, west of the Willamette River, most of Washington County, and all of Columbia, Clatsop, and Tillamook counties. A member of the House Committee on Education and Workforce, Bonamici has rallied for workers and teachers, and like her fellow congresspeople at recent town halls, has heard the frustrations of constituents about DOGE cuts and how the president's dismantling of the Department of Education is affecting them.
I was really impressed by the level of outrage, anger, frustration, and desperation that we all feel. And we're begging our representatives to do more and get louder.
Congresswoman Suzanne Bonamici, thanks for stopping by Eye on Northwest Politics.
Thanks, Ken. Good to be here.
Well, you were one of about 20 Democrats, locked out of the U.S. Department of Education recently, as the agency is now in full dismantle mode right now under Education Secretary Linda McMahon. So what's your concern about what appears to be the loss of the Department of Education?
I have many concerns about the attempted dismantling of the Department of Education. First of all, Congress created the Department of Education, and only Congress could get rid of it. So what Donald Trump and Elon Musk are trying to do is illegal, perhaps unconstitutional, as well as many other actions that they're taking. But it really concerns me as an education advocate for many years, not just as a policymaker, but as a parent and as a graduate of public schools myself, is the message it sends and the harm that it will do. And I noticed in the clip, Ken, it said something about the president wants to return education to the states. The states already have the decision-making power about curriculum and how many teachers are in each classroom and those issues that are truly local. That's not what the federal government does. What the federal government does is help fill opportunity gaps in 3 main areas. First, Title I, that's additional funding for schools that have high populations of low-income students. IDEA, which is the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, and many other issues, but those are the top 2 in the K-12 system. And then the biggest pot of money is in financial aid for students who choose to go to college. Pell Grants, work study, student loans. Without those opportunities, those funding opportunities, we're going to see a lot of students not be able to reach their full potential. So I'm strongly opposed to the dismantling. This is not about government efficiency. Even when they say they're trying to put the program somewhere else, that's not an efficient way to run the Department of Education and to run these programs.
Well, talk about efficiently running these programs. The Trump administration says that many of the functions that you just described can be transferred to other agencies and actually done better through those other agencies, and that the rest is just waste in administration.
Nonsense. That's not the case. And in fact, he first said he was going to send the large student loan portfolio to the Small Business Administration, but then they cut the Small Business Administration by significant cuts, maybe 43% is what I heard. So that's not the mission of the Small Business Administration. Another important function is the Office of Civil Rights at the Department of Education. A lot of the education laws came about in the civil rights era to help close those opportunity gaps. Those are programs that are best run in the Department of Education with the people who have expertise. Is there a way to make things better? Absolutely. And we were working on that with the FAFSA rollout, the financial aid application form. There were technical problems with that. We recognized that, and we were working on fixing that. So keep the Department of Education open is what we say. I'm going to be fighting with my colleagues every step of the way to keep that open and to make sure that those investments are there. I've never had, in my years, many years of education advocacy, nobody has ever said to me, we need less funding for students with disabilities. Everyone always says, please, fully fund IDEA. So we can meet the promise to students with disabilities, so we can close the gaps for students from low-income families.
Well, student academic outcomes nationwide have been less than satisfactory for decades, and critics say the Department of Education has done little to move the needle in that regard. Isn't that enough to consider a different path?
Absolutely not. In fact, when I look at test scores, I see many things. Number one, with test scores, we understand those scores help us identify the students who need assistance. We have students still recovering from social isolation from the pandemic. And when you really analyze the test scores, Ken, it's the low-income students. The students from higher-income families where they go home to a house full of books and educated parents, they're doing all right. It's the low-income students. So when I look at the test scores, that's even more of a reason to continue the investments through Title I to close those gaps for low-income students, and also to fully fund the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. And I know that our local schools are working hard to do that, but if they lose that funding, or if that funding gets disrupted, they won't be able to meet those needs. Students really need like a well-rounded education. If we want to help students with test scores, we need to close poverty gaps, make sure students have enough to eat at school, make sure they have access to behavioral health care and well-rounded education.
Well, we just learned about cuts to Health and Human Services that could affect $117 million in grants to the Oregon Health Authority. What are your thoughts about those cuts and the DOGE cuts in general?
I'm vehemently opposed to those, and I'm extremely concerned about the cuts not only to Health and Human Services, but also the cuts that are proposed in Congress to Medicaid and Medicare and Social Security. Those are on the chopping block. And I tell you, in a state like Oregon, where we have done some very innovative work with Medicaid, this is going to mean people going without health care. And that's true not just in urban and suburban communities, but particularly rural communities as well. So if they want to make Americans unhealthy, they could continue with those cuts, but that's not what I'm hearing from my constituents. Cuts to Medicaid, cuts to the Department of Health and Human Services are going to result in a country that's less healthy, not more healthy. And without access to health care, we're going to see devastating results.
The fact of the matter is that the Democrats don't have a lot of control in Congress now. You're in the minority both in the House and the Senate, of course, the White House as well. Any complaints about these kind of issues, doesn't it feel like you're spitting into the wind right now?
Absolutely not. And I'll tell you why. I did 5 live town hall meetings a couple weeks ago and then another one last week with most of the Oregon delegation. The American people are with us. Oregonians are with us. We heard from people from urban, suburban, and rural communities. They're extremely concerned. Why is an unelected billionaire making these decisions? Why are they making these cuts, putting people out of work? And they don't seem to be justified. They're not making the case, and they're not doing it well. Like the fact that they fired several people from the Bonneville Power Administration, that's ratepayer funded. They don't save any money by doing that. They affect our power. They are firing people from the United States Department of Agriculture working on food safety. And so these cuts that they're making aren't about efficiency. They're about showing their control. So I don't feel, I understand. Thanks for the reminder that I'm in the minority in the House and the Senate, and we don't have the White House. But the American people are with it, and we are with us, and they don't like these cuts. They don't like the power that has been given to an unelected billionaire. And Donald Trump and Elon Musk are out of touch with the real needs of American people. The people I speak with, many are still struggling. They're still working hard to put food on the table. They're struggling to afford housing. They're struggling to afford childcare. That is not something that Donald Trump and Elon Musk have any connection with. I doubt that either of them has ever set foot in a public school. So the fact that the policies that they're trying to pass, the executive orders that they're issuing, many of which have been found to be illegal or unconstitutional, the American public does not support that.
And our Oregon Attorney General Dan Rayfield has been very aggressive in fighting against a lot of those executive orders.
He has been, and attorneys general across the country have been. And in fact, there was just, is my understanding, a case that was brought by all of the attorneys general, Democratic and Republican, against the cuts to the Veterans Administration. When you think about the people who have served our country, they deserve to have access to services, access to health care, access to behavioral health care. And I heard recently at a Veterans Roundtable that they're not getting that access. And that's appalling. And that is not what we stand for as the United States of America. So what we're hearing from Oregonians and what we're seeing across the country as I speak with my colleagues is that the American people do not like the direction that the Trump administration is going in. They thought they were going to see lower costs and safer communities, and neither of those is happening.
Congresswoman Suzanne Bonamici, thank you very much for being on Eye on Northwest Politics.
Thank you. Thanks, Ken.